Civilizations lived and died by their command of a single, vital resource. We are uncovering 24 ingenious water systems that reshaped ancient survival, revealing how forgotten engineering marvels built empires and quenched the thirst of millions. You will discover the hidden logic behind subterranean rivers and gravity-defying aqueducts that challenge everything we assume about the past. How did a desert society flourish with spiral-shaped wells that harnessed the wind itself? And what secret allowed a Chinese engineer to tame a raging river without a single dam? By the end, you will see our modern world and our own future through the lens of these liquid blueprints. Do you believe the greatest lessons in survival are already buried beneath our feet? The story of water and civilization begins not with complex machines, but with mud and muscle. In the fertile crescents of the world, along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, humanity first learned to trade wandering for rooted lives. These river valleys offered a paradoxical gift: annual floods that deposited rich, life-giving silt but also unleashed chaotic, destructive forces. The very source of abundance was also a source of peril. To survive, let alone thrive, our ancestors had to become masters of timing and terrain. They learned to read the river's moods, constructing the first simple earthen berms to divert its life-giving waters into their fields. This was the genesis of irrigation, a humble beginning that demanded unprecedented cooperation. For the first time, people had to plan together, work together, and govern together to manage their shared water source. This collective effort, born from a struggle against nature's unpredictability, laid the administrative and social bedrock for everything that followed, from written language to codified law. The spirit of innovation forged in that mud would soon be tested in harsher climates, leading to our first true marvel, a labyrinth of tunnels hidden deep beneath the desert sands. Beneath the sun-scorched plains of Persia, a hidden river flowed. It was not carved by nature, but by the brilliant foresight of ancient engineers. This was the Qanat, a subterranean marvel that turned barren lands into thriving oases. While surface water vanished under a relentless sun, these gently sloping tunnels journeyed for miles, tapping into groundwater trapped deep within mountain foothills. Their genius lay in harnessing gravity alone. By starting at a high elevation and maintaining a precise, gradual descent, the Qanat guided water effortlessly to the surface far below, where it could finally emerge into the open air. This was not just a delivery system, it was a preservation method. Locked away from the heat in its earthen passage, every precious drop was shielded from evaporation, a constant and deadly threat in the desert. What did it take to build such a hidden highway for water? The construction demanded both incredible precision and immense bravery. Teams of specialized workers, known as mukanis, began by identifying a water source high in the alluvial fans of mountains. From there, they dug a mother well, often plunging to depths that would challenge modern courage. Then, the real work began. A main tunnel was carefully excavated from the planned settlement area back toward this well, its slope calculated with nothing more than simple tools and generations of inherited knowledge. As they dug, they punctuated the tunnel's path with a chain of vertical shafts. These were not just for removing debris, they were vital lifelines, providing air for the diggers below and serving as permanent maintenance access points. From above, the Qanat revealed itself only as a line of craters marching across the landscape, a mysterious dotted line leading to a secret source. The result was nothing short of miraculous. A single Qanat could sustain an entire city, providing clean water for drinking and reliable irrigation for fields of wheat, barley, and dates. It created a ribbon of life, enabling empires to rise in places once deemed uninhabitable. The technology spread along trade routes from the heart of Persia to the deserts of North Africa and even the oases of Western China. Each Qanat was a testament to a profound understanding of the earth, a lesson in sustainable management written not on parchment, but in cool, dark tunnels deep underground. It makes you wonder how many other such solutions are hidden just beneath our feet, waiting only for us to look. While the Qanat was a hidden lifeline, the Roman aqueduct was a triumphant declaration of power and engineering prowess. These monumental structures, with their iconic rows of arches marching across the landscape, did more than carry water. They were bold statements of control, bringing fresh water from distant mountain springs directly into the heart of the empire's greatest cities. Rome itself was eventually fed by 11 of these massive systems, a web of liquid highways that conquered geography itself. The core principle was deceptively simple: gravity. But the execution was a masterpiece of precision. Roman engineers designed these channels with a consistent, almost imperceptible downward slope. Over dozens of miles, the gradient had to be perfect. Too steep and the water would erode the channel walls, too shallow and the flow would stagnate. Achieving this required incredible surveying skill, using tools like the chorobates, a long leveling frame, to ensure water always knew which way to go. The result was a staggering daily delivery. Millions of gallons poured into the city, feeding a complex distribution network. This water cascaded into public fountains where everyone, from the richest senator to the poorest laborer, could collect it. It filled the vast public baths, centers of social life and hygiene. It flushed out sewers, improving urban sanitation on a scale previously unimaginable. This was more than just advanced plumbing. It was the foundation for a new way of urban living. The aqueducts enabled population densities and public health standards that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. They were a physical symbol of Roman order and civilization, proving that a society's ambition could literally reshape its landscape and ensure its survival. Yet, for all their grandeur, these stone arches represented a philosophy of conquering nature. This monumental approach makes the subtle, almost invisible ingenuity of our next system all the more remarkable. Far below the dusty plains of India, a different kind of water architecture awaited, one that invited you to walk down into the earth itself. These were the stepwells, known as valves or baolis, and they were so much more than simple holes in the ground. They were inverted temples, vast subterranean palaces built to honor and access the water table. While Roman aqueducts reached horizontally across the land, stepwells plunged vertically, their intricate staircases descending story after story into a cool, shadowy silence. Each step was a deliberate design, exposing a massive surface area of water to the air. This was not an accident. As the sun beat down on the surface, the evaporation from these stepped pools created a natural cooling effect, transforming the well into a refuge from the oppressive heat, a sanctuary where the air itself felt different. But their purpose was profoundly communal. In a climate defined by monsoons and long, dry spells, these structures were critical reservoirs, ensuring a reliable water supply through the leanest seasons. Their true genius, however, lay in how they elevated this necessity into an art form. Pillared pavilions and exquisitely carved walls turned the journey for water into a social and spiritual experience. This was where a village would gather, where travelers would rest, and where rituals would be performed. The stepwell wove together practicality, community, and devotion into a single, beautiful tapestry. It presents a powerful idea that managing a vital resource did not require dominating the landscape. but could instead involve creating a space that nourished both the body and the soul. This holistic philosophy stands in stark contrast to the ambition of our next system, which sought not to harmonize with nature, but to bend an entire river to its will. High in the arid plains of southern Peru, where rainfall is a near-mythical event, the Nazca people confronted a paradox. They inhabited a land so dry it seemed to defy life itself, yet they created the vast, enigmatic lines and complex societies that still capture our imagination. Their survival hinged on a system as clever and mysterious as their geoglyphs, the Pukios. These were not grand aqueducts marching across the land, but spiraling stone portals descending into the earth. From above, they appeared as giant, stone-lined funnels corkscrewing into the ground, their true function hidden in plain sight. The secret of the Pukios lay in their brilliant partnership with an invisible force, the wind. The spirals were not merely decorative or access points, they were sophisticated wind traps. As air currents swept across the desert floor, they were funneled down these helical openings, creating a powerful pressure differential within the connected underground canals. This difference in air pressure essentially acted as a natural pump, pushing water from the subterranean aquifers through miles of stone-lined tunnels and forcing it to the surface, where it could be channeled directly into agricultural fields. This was engineering that worked with the desert's own harsh dynamics, transforming the relentless wind from a desiccating enemy into a vital ally. It was a system that required no fuel, no moving parts, just a profound understanding of the environment. With this ingenious network, the Nazca turned barren soil into fertile ground, cultivating crops that sustained their culture for centuries in a landscape receiving less than an inch of rain each year. The exact methods of their original construction and maintenance are still a subject of scholarly debate, a testament to their lost knowledge. The Pukios stand as a powerful reminder that the most advanced technology is not always about imposing our will, but about listening to the subtle whispers of the natural world and finding a way to make them sing. This mastery of water for agriculture, born from such harsh conditions, would find its ultimate expression in another part of the world, where an entire civilization was engineered around the rhythmic flooding of a single, mighty river. The Min River was not just water, it was a dragon. For the people of China's Chengdu Plain, its seasonal floods were a cycle of destruction, wiping out crops and lives with terrifying regularity. Conquering this dragon seemed impossible, a task for gods, not men. Yet around 256 BC, a governor and engineer named Lai Bing with his son chose not to fight the river but to reason with it. Their creation, the Dujiangyan Irrigation system, stands as one of history's most profound acts of hydrological diplomacy. It began with a simple, brilliant insight. Instead of blocking the river's power with a dam, they would guide it, splitting its force into manageable streams. The first component was the Yuzui, or fish mouth levee. This man-made island, strategically placed in the center of the river, acted like a natural valve. It divided the Min into two channels, an inner stream for irrigation and an outer stream to carry away the main flow and sediment. This was not a brutal barrier, but a clever redirect. The second piece was the Fascian, or flying sand spillway. This was the system's pressure release valve, a low weir that allowed excess floodwater to drain back into the outer river. During normal flow, water would continue into the irrigation network, but when the dragon roared with floodwaters, the surge would simply top the spillway and return to the main channel. Its genius was amplified by its ability to use the river's own sediment-laden current to scour the channel clean, flushing out silt that would have otherwise clogged the entire works. The final piece was the Bayapinku, or precious neck channel. the narrow gateway that carved through a mountain to funnel a precise, controlled amount of water into the vast web of canals waiting on the Chengdu Plain. Together, these three elements formed a self-regulating, self-cleaning system. It required no moving parts, no human intervention to open or close gates. It worked with the river's own physics, its flow and sediment, to maintain a perfect balance. The result was the transformation of a flood-ravaged wasteland into the legendary land of abundance, a fertile breadbasket that still irrigates over 5,000 square kilometers of farmland today, more than 2,000 years after its creation. This was not engineering that dominated nature, but a partnership with it, a lesson in listening to the water's own language to ensure survival. While Lai Bing found harmony with his river, another civilization would achieve a similar feat through sheer, monumental coordination, moving mountains of earth to sculpt an entire landscape for water. The Andes Mountains presented a problem that would intimidate even the most determined farmer. Their slopes were not just steep, they were treacherously unstable, prone to landslides that could wipe out entire fields in an instant. Yet, the Inca saw this vertical landscape not as an obstacle, but as a canvas. They did not simply farm the land, they sculpted it, carving the mountainsides into vast, sweeping stairways of green. These were the iconic agricultural terraces, but their true genius lay hidden in the water that brought them to life. A complex web of stone-lined canals and aqueducts snaked down from the high peaks, capturing the pristine meltwater from glaciers and redirecting the flow of natural mountain springs. This was not a haphazard delivery. Each terrace level was fed with precise control, ensuring an even, gentle distribution that soaked the soil without washing it away. The water itself was managed with incredible finesse. Stone conduits and carefully placed fountains acted as natural pressure regulators, slowing the water's descent and controlling its volume as it journeyed from one level to the next. This meticulous control did more than just irrigate, it created a cascade of microclimates. The higher, sun-drenched terraces could grow hardy grains like quinoa, while the lower, more protected levels provided the perfect environment for over 3,000 varieties of potato. The system was a self-regulating marvel. The terraces themselves functioned as a giant sponge, the stone retaining walls reducing erosion while the deep gravel layers beneath the soil provided perfect drainage, preventing waterlogging during heavy rains. This was architecture and hydrology fused into one. The terraces transformed a seemingly hostile environment into a vertical breadbasket capable of supporting a vast and powerful empire. It was a supreme act of listening to the land, of understanding that survival in such a place depended not on conquering the mountain, but on collaborating with its every contour. This mastery of turning harsh landscapes into havens of abundance raises a compelling question. How would another civilization solve the opposite problem? Not a lack of flat land, but a complete and total lack of land itself. While the Inca sculpted mountains, another civilization was mastering the flow of water within the very walls of its grandest city. On the sun-drenched island of Crete, the Minoan palace of Knossos hummed with a hidden, liquid heartbeat. Around 2000 BC, while much of Europe was still relying on wells and rivers, the Minoans engineered one of the continent's first truly integrated water systems. They channeled fresh water from distant mountain springs directly into the palace using carefully laid terracotta pipes. These were not open channels, but closed conduits that protected the water from contamination, a critical innovation. The pipes were tapered, designed to be wider at one end and narrower at the other, fitting together snugly to maintain pressure and minimize leaks. This was a deliberate application of hydraulic principles, using gravity to create a consistent, controlled flow through the palace's labyrinthine corridors. But their genius did not stop with delivery. The Minoans possessed a remarkably modern understanding of urban hygiene. They constructed an elaborate underground network of stone drains and sewers to carry wastewater away from the palace complex. This was a complete closed-loop system, managing both the arrival of purity and the expulsion of waste as two halves of a single problem. Imagine the reality of a multi-story palace, home to hundreds, even thousands of people. Without this system, waste would have accumulated in courtyards, creating a pervasive threat of disease. Instead, the Minoans enjoyed a standard of sanitation that would not be seen again in Europe for over 1,000 years. Their terracotta pipes and stone conduits represent a peak of Bronze Age engineering, a holistic view of public health that was absolutely essential for dense urban survival. This integrated approach, this concern for the entire water cycle within a city, was a conceptual leap that would be tragically forgotten, its principles lost to time only to be painstakingly rediscovered millennia later. It forces us to ask, how does a society so advanced simply vanish, and what other foundational knowledge was buried with them? The principles of hydraulic integration found a breathtaking expression in the heart of the Persian Empire. On the rocky banks of the Karan River, in what is now Iran, engineers did not just manage water, they choreographed it. The Shushtar historical hydraulic system was a symphony in stone, an orchestrated chaos of bridges, dams, watermills, and tunnels all carved directly into the living rock. This was not a single structure but a complete, interconnected power complex. Its heart was the band-e-mizzen, a colossal diversion dam that acted as the system's master conductor. Instead of simply blocking the river, this dam elegantly partitioned its flow, directing a powerful, controlled torrent into a hand-dug canal known as the Garga. This newly created river was the lifeblood of the entire operation. It was channeled into a labyrinth of underground tunnels that fed the vast plains for irrigation, turning the surrounding desert into a breadbasket. But the water's work was far from done. Before it returned to the main river, its immense energy was harnessed to drive a series of industrial watermills. These mills, housed within the very structures that guided the water, ground grain and powered workshops, fueling the city's economy. The entire complex was a masterclass in multi-purpose design, a cascade of utility where every drop of water was made to work multiple jobs. It provided drinking water, irrigated fields, generated industrial power, and even served as a defensive moat. The thunderous roar of the water plunging through the system was so immense that the site earned the title of the world's largest water museum, a living testament to an ancient vision of total resource optimization. This was infrastructure as a holistic life support system, where water was the engine for both survival and prosperity. Such monumental coordination of nature's force hints at a deeper question: what happens when a civilization's survival depends not on a river's power, but on its complete and utter absence? The roar of the Shushtar complex was a testament to imperial power, but the true sustenance of civilization often rests in the hands of the individual. In the daily rhythm of life along the Nile, a quieter revolution was taking place, one powered by a single, elegant tool. The Shadoof transformed back-breaking labor into manageable work. Picture a long wooden pole balanced on an upright frame, a clay bucket hanging from one end, and a heavy counterweight of mud or stones fixed to the other. With a simple push down on the weighted end, a farmer could dip the empty bucket into the river. The counterweight then did most of the work, effortlessly lifting the full bucket high enough to swing it over and pour its contents into a waiting canal. This was the lever principle in its most practical and widespread application. Before the Shadoof, lifting water meant hauling heavy jars up steep banks by sheer muscle. a slow and exhausting process that limited how much land could be irrigated beyond the river's immediate reach. This simple device changed everything. It allowed a single person to irrigate fields that were significantly higher than the river level, opening up vast new tracts of the desert fringe for cultivation. The impact was a dramatic amplification of Egypt's agricultural heartland. More land under cultivation meant more food, which in turn could support a larger, more stable population and fuel the immense projects of the pharaohs. Its beauty was in its accessibility. Made from local wood, rope, and clay, any village could build and maintain its own shadoofs. This was not a technology controlled by a central authority, but one that empowered every farmer along the river. The shadoof became the fundamental cell of a vast, decentralized network, the basic tool that allowed the entire organism of ancient Egypt to thrive. It proves that the most profound innovations are not always the most complex, but often the most perfectly adapted to human need. Yet, as populations grew and demands on the river intensified, how would this simple lever evolve to meet the challenge of lifting water even higher? The shadoof gave every farmer a lever to lift the river, but the river itself demanded a far grander lever to control its very flow. In the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the world's first hydraulic civilization was born from mud and ambition. The Sumerians and their successors did not just farm the land, they redesigned it, engineering an intricate web of canals that stretched for hundreds of miles. This was the world's first large-scale irrigation network, a vascular system of primary canals, secondary channels, and countless field ditches that fed life into the arid soil. They transformed the river's chaotic, seasonal floods from a destructive force into a predictable, controlled resource, enabling year-round agriculture on a staggering scale. This was more than digging ditches, it was a monumental feat of social organization. Thousands of laborers had to be coordinated, their efforts synchronized to a degree never before seen. This collective endeavor gave rise to the first bureaucracies, the first systems of taxation to fund the work, and ultimately, some of humanity's first written legal codes. These laws meticulously detailed water rights, dictating who could take water, when, and how much, establishing a framework for sharing this vital resource that prevented endless conflict. But this triumph of engineering contained a hidden flaw. The very canals that brought life also slowly poisoned the land. In a region with high evaporation and poor natural drainage, the constant irrigation caused water to seep downward, dissolving ancient salts from the earth and drawing them back up to the surface as the water evaporated. Over centuries, a white, toxic crust began to form on the fields, stunting crops and steadily reducing yields. Some historians point to this creeping salinization as a key factor in the eventual decline of Sumerian power. Their greatest achievement carried the seeds of their own downfall, an early and profound lesson that survival depended not just on harnessing water, but on understanding the full, complex cycle of its interaction with the land. It was a warning written in salt, a reminder that every solution can create a new problem for the generations to come. The Sumerian fields fell silent under a crust of salt, a cautionary tale of solutions creating new problems. But far to the west, in the heart of a desert canyon, another civilization faced an even more volatile water source and mastered it with breathtaking finesse. The narrow, winding Sikh Gorge leading to Petra is a place of awe, its towering rose-red cliffs blocking out the sun. Yet this natural wonder was also a death trap, a channel for devastating flash floods that could appear from a clear sky. The Nabateans saw this danger and recognized its hidden potential. They carved a sophisticated water management system directly into the stone walls of the Sikh itself. This was not a single aqueduct, but a complete hydrological network woven into the fabric of the canyon. Along the soaring cliffs, they carved open channels to catch seasonal runoff. They laid terracotta pipelines to carry spring water and sealed the joints with waterproof cement to prevent any precious drop from escaping. But their true genius was in confronting the flash flood itself. They did not simply try to block these torrents. Instead, they constructed a series of diversion dams and underground cisterns designed to capture the sudden, violent surge. As a wall of water thundered down the Sick, these structures would siphon off the flood, taming its destructive power and redirecting it into massive reservoirs. The captured water was then channeled into a colossal cistern carved into the cliff high above the city, a gravity-fed treasury that guaranteed a reliable supply long after the desert sun had dried the riverbed. This entire system transformed a catastrophic force into their primary water source. It was a profound understanding of desert hydrology, an intimate knowledge that allowed them to predict and harness the very weather patterns that would destroy a lesser society. This liquid lifeline is what enabled Petra to flourish as a glittering hub of the incense trade, a city of monumental tombs and bustling markets that could host thousands of travelers and residents in a landscape that received barely 7 inches of rain a year. They did not just find water in the desert, they engineered the landscape to deliver it on command, proving that survival in the most unforgiving environments depends on listening to the whispers of the local climate. While the Nabateans mastered the art of capturing fleeting desert storms, another culture would perfect the science of storing the sky's bounty for generations to come. In the bustling agora of an ancient Greek city, the sound of flowing water was the sound of civic life itself. While the Nabateans hoarded water in desert cisterns, the Greeks celebrated it in their very centers of public discourse. Their approach was built on a radical idea that water was not a private luxury but a public good, essential for the survival of the democratic polis. This philosophy flowed from stone spouts into ornate marble basins, creating the public fountains that served as the community's heart and hydration point. These were not merely functional. The famed Enikraunos in Athens, the fountain with 9 spouts, was a monumental structure, a place where the act of collecting water was elevated into a daily social ritual. Here, politics were debated, news was exchanged, and the bonds of community were strengthened over the simple, shared necessity of a drink. This network of civic hydration was fed by an engineering web stretching far beyond the city walls. Aqueducts channeled water from distant mountain springs, while deep wells tapped into local groundwater, all converging on these public squares. Greek engineers refined the delivery with pressurized pipe systems, crafting conduits from clay, and later lead to maintain a steady, efficient flow to multiple outlets. This was more than advanced plumbing. It was the physical manifestation of a core Greek ideal. In a democracy, the health of the state depended on the health of its citizens, and that began with guaranteed access to clean water. This principle of public water access would ripple out across the Mediterranean, influencing urban planners for centuries and planting an early seed for our modern concepts of public health and municipal responsibility. It prompts a reflection on the nature of a resource we often take for granted. Is water a commodity to be sold, or is it a right that defines a civilized society? This very question would be tested on an unprecedented scale, where the challenge was not bringing water to a city, but building a city where there was no water at all. The Greek ideal of public water was a powerful concept, but it pales before the sheer scale of a city that was quite literally built by water. In the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire engineered Angkor not just with water in mind, but as its foundational blueprint. This was not a city that happened to have a reservoir It was a hydraulic metropolis where canals and moats functioned as its streets and districts. The entire urban landscape was a vast, engineered watershed, an astonishing network of channels and colossal reservoirs called barrays. The West Barray alone stretches for 8 kilometers in length and 2 kilometers in width, an artificial inland sea built by human hands. This was not merely a holding tank, it was the beating heart of the empire. During the intense monsoon season, the system captured torrential rains, storing billions of gallons of water to see the city through the long, dry months. This guaranteed water security allowed for an agricultural miracle, the irrigation of vast rice paddies that could support a population numbering in the hundreds of thousands. But the water's role was not just practical, it was profoundly spiritual. The barrays were designed as symbolic representations of the Hindu ocean of creation, with the city's central temple, Angkor Wat, mirroring the mythical Mount Meru rising from the cosmic waters. The flow of water through the city was a continuous religious ritual, its management a sacred duty that connected the king to the gods. The layout of canals and reservoirs dictated where people lived, how they farmed, and how they worshipped. This total integration reveals a civilization that saw water as the single thread from which the entire tapestry of society was woven. Yet, this magnificent dependency also contained a fatal vulnerability. Recent studies suggest that the very complexity of this system may have contributed to Angkor's eventual decline. Decades of drought interspersed with intense monsoon rains could have overwhelmed the meticulously built canals, causing catastrophic erosion and siltation that the society could no longer manage. The hydraulic city, a masterpiece of engineering, may have ultimately been a victim of its own scale and a changing climate, a sobering reminder that even the grandest water systems are locked in a delicate dance with the environment. The American Southwest holds a secret of scale that rivals any old-world marvel. In the blistering expanse of the Sonoran Desert, where the sun bleaches the very color from the land, the Hohokam people did not just survive, they engineered a river on their own terms. Starting around 300 AD, this culture undertook a project of staggering ambition, carving the largest and most sophisticated irrigation system in all of prehistoric North America. With nothing but stone tools and coordinated labor, they excavated a web of canals that stretched for hundreds of miles, a vascular system designed to give life to the desert. They diverted the unpredictable flows of the Salt and Gila rivers, taming these seasonal waters and guiding them across the arid plains. The scale of their main channels is almost difficult to comprehend, some measuring over 30 feet wide and 10 feet deep. These were not simple ditches, but monumental earthworks that could have swallowed a modern house. This liquid infrastructure transformed barren ground into thousands of acres of fertile farmland, allowing them to cultivate the essential triad of corn, beans, and squash in a land that received less than 10 inches of rain each year. For more than a millennium, this system was their lifeline, a testament to a profound understanding of hydrology and social organization that enabled a thriving society to flourish where logic said none should exist. Their canals were the bedrock of their world, enabling not just farming, but the creation of permanent villages, ball courts, and a rich cultural life. Yet their story carries a haunting epilogue. After 1,000 years, the Hohokam culture faded from the archaeological record. While the reasons are complex, their legacy stands as a powerful, dual-edged lesson. It is a brilliant demonstration of human ingenuity in the face of extreme environmental challenge, but it may also be a cautionary tale about the long-term pressures of intensive irrigation. Could the very system that sustained them for so long have eventually contributed to its own undoing through soil salinity or a changing climate that their engineering could no longer adapt to? Their vanished world asks us a difficult question: How do we build systems that are not just powerful, but truly resilient across centuries? This challenge of sustaining a society on the edge would be answered in a completely different way by a civilization that did not fight the desert, but learned to drink the very clouds. High in the central highlands of Sri Lanka, the monsoon rains fell with a predictable rhythm, yet the lowland plains below baked under a fierce sun for much of the year. The survival of a civilization in this divide demanded more than just capturing water. It required a symphony of storage and release. Ancient Sri Lankan kings presided over the creation of a breathtakingly complex hydraulic society, one built around man-made reservoirs known as tanks. But the true genius was not in any single tank, no matter how large. It was in the cascade. Picture a river not of water, but of reservoirs themselves, a stairway of liquid steps descending gently across the landscape. A massive primary reservoir at the top of the system would capture the seasonal deluge. This water was not released all at once. Instead, it was metered out through a network of canals to a series of smaller tanks downstream. Each of these would fill, and then in turn feed its surplus into even smaller tanks, creating a chain of interconnected water bodies. This stepwise design was a masterstroke of ecological logic. By breaking the water into a series of smaller, shaded bodies, the system dramatically reduced the surface area exposed to the relentless sun, minimizing the devastating loss to evaporation. It also allowed silt and nutrients to settle out in the upper tanks, ensuring that clearer, cleaner water flowed to the fields below, while simultaneously recharging the groundwater table at every step. This was a self-regulating, self-cleaning watershed, engineered by human hands. The crown jewel of this hydraulic civilization was the Parakrama Samudra, the Sea of Parakramabahu. Built in the 12th century, this colossal reservoir sprawled across the plains, a vast inland ocean contained by a bund, or dam, that stretched for nearly 9 miles. Its scale was a declaration of royal power, but its purpose was profoundly practical. It served as the great heart of its cascade, pumping life through canals and channels to a vast network of smaller tanks, which in turn fed the endless emerald paddies of rice that fed a dense population. What is perhaps most remarkable is that this ancient system is not a relic. Many of these tanks, including the Great Sea itself, remain in use today, still irrigating fields and sustaining communities nearly 1,000 years after their construction. They stand as a timeless lesson in sustainable agriculture, a blueprint for how to live in harmony with the boom and bust cycle of a monsoon climate. This was not a fight against nature, but a deep, enduring collaboration with it. How different our modern world might look if we viewed water not as a resource to be exploited, but as a partner in a long-term relationship. A king's power was once measured by the water he could command. In the heart of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, water engineering transformed from a necessity of survival into a grand spectacle of royal authority. King Sennacherib did not just build canals, he orchestrated hydrological declarations of his own divinity. His most audacious project fed his new capital, Nineveh, with a canal stretching over 50 miles from the mountains. This was not a simple trench. At a place called Jerwan, his engineers constructed a stone aqueduct, one of the oldest ever discovered, to carry this artificial river across a valley. Its stone block inscription did not credit the engineers or the laborers, but boasted solely of the king's wisdom and might. The water itself became a political tool, a liquid testament to the king's ability to reshape the world for his subjects. Royal inscriptions celebrated how these channels turned barren, thirsting lands into lush royal parks and thriving orchards, creating landscapes of plenty that mirrored the empire's prosperity under his rule. This was state building through hydrological might. By providing such abundance, the king solidified his divine right to rule, presenting himself as the sole provider, the master of both the human and natural worlds. The survival of the empire and the dominance of its leader became one and the same, flowing through canals that were as much monuments as they were utilities. This fusion of water and absolute power raises a question that would echo through the ages. What happens when a society's entire existence depends on a single, fragile source, and the technology to access it is held exclusively by a ruling class? Such control over a life-giving resource creates a dependency far deeper than any army could enforce. A king's power could be measured in water, but a civilization's fragility was measured by the single barrier that held it back. In the stark, arid highlands of ancient Yemen, the Sabaean kingdom anchored its entire existence to one legendary structure, the Great Marib Dam. This was not merely a wall of stone, it was the linchpin of a civilization, a colossal barrier nearly 2,000 feet long that stretched across a valley, capturing the violent, seasonal floodwaters that roared down from the wadis. Its initial construction was a simple act of diversion, but over centuries it grew into a monumental feat, creating a vast, life-giving reservoir in the heart of the desert. The water it captured transformed the surrounding sands into a sea of green, an agricultural paradise so prolific that the entire region earned a legendary name from envious Roman geographers, Arabia Felix or Fortunate Arabia. For over 1,000 years, this dam was the kingdom's beating heart, its reservoirs and canals supporting a thriving, sophisticated society in a landscape otherwise defined by scarcity. Yet this magnificent achievement contained a terrifying vulnerability. The entire civilization was a hostage to the integrity of that single structure. Its final, catastrophic collapse in the 6th century AD was an event so momentous it echoed through history and scripture, mentioned in the Quran as a divine punishment. The failure of the dam was not just an engineering disaster, it was an existential one. The vast population it supported scattered across the Arabian Peninsula, their homeland rendered uninhabitable almost overnight. The great South Arabian kingdoms faded into memory, their power broken not by an army, but by the failure of the very earth and stone that had sustained them. The epic of the Marib Dam stands as a stark lesson in the perils of centralized survival, a reminder that a civilization built upon one magnificent, irreplaceable pillar has built its house upon the most fragile of foundations. While the fate of a kingdom could rest on a single dam, the daily survival of a desert city relied on a quieter, more intimate kind of genius. In the baking heart of ancient Persia, where summer temperatures could turn surface water into a warm, undrinkable broth, communities perfected a structure that was part refrigerator, part sanctuary, and entirely underground. The Ab Anbar was a masterpiece of passive cooling, a subterranean reservoir designed to keep drinking water icy cold throughout the year. Its design was a symphony of simple physics. The reservoir itself was dug deep into the cool earth, shielded by massively thick walls made from a special sand, clay, and egg-white mortar called saruj, an ancient composite that was virtually waterproof. Above this hidden cistern rose a distinctive domed roof, its shape not just for architectural beauty, but for strength and stability. But the true magic of the Ab Anbar was its partnership with another structure, the Bajir or wind catcher. These tall, ornate towers rose above the city's skyline, their openings strategically facing the prevailing winds. They functioned like natural air conditioners. The slightest breeze was captured high above the hot ground and funneled down a shaft directly into the heart of the Ab Anbar. As this dry desert air flowed over the surface of the stored water, it would pick up moisture and evaporate, a process that draws heat energy from the surrounding environment. This constant, gentle airflow would then, now cooler and heavier, sink down into the reservoir space, chilling the water, while the warmer air was pushed out through a separate opening. The system required no electricity, no moving parts, just a perfect understanding of airflow, evaporation, and thermal mass. Stepping down into an anbar from the blistering street was like entering another world. The air was cool and still, the water drawn from the taps was refreshingly cold, and the space often served as a communal gathering point during the worst of the heat. This was not a technology of kings and monuments, but one of neighborhoods and daily life. It demonstrated that survival in an extreme climate did not always demand monumental struggle, but could be achieved through clever, elegant design that worked in silent harmony with the environment. This ancient principle of using natural forces for cooling raises a fascinating parallel to our next system, where an entire culture learned to draw water not from the ground, but directly from the sky itself. The Shadoof gave a single farmer leverage, but the sprawling rice paddies of ancient China demanded a machine with a perpetual heartbeat. For the vast, terraced fields where water was the difference between feast and famine, a simple bucket was no longer enough. The solution arrived during the Han Dynasty in the form of the chain pump, a device that transformed irrigation from a strenuous task into a continuous, flowing system. Its design was a marvel of practical engineering. A long wooden or bamboo chain fitted with a series of square pallets was looped through a wooden trough. This assembly was powered by a massive treadwheel, turned by the steady steps of a farmer or, on a larger scale, by the patient strength of an ox. As the wheel rotated, the chain of pallets would circulate endlessly. Each pallet would scoop water from a lower river or canal at the bottom of its journey, carry it up the inclined trough, and then tip its liquid cargo into a higher irrigation ditch at the top. This created an unbroken, climbing stream of water. The efficiency was revolutionary. Unlike the Shadoof, which lifted water in a single, intermittent motion, the chain pump provided a constant flow, capable of moving large volumes to significantly greater heights. It became the literal circulatory system for China's agricultural heartland, its wooden bones and pallets pumping life into the intricate networks of flooded rice fields. This mechanical innovation unlocked the full potential of wet rice cultivation, a farming method that could produce immense caloric yields from small plots of land. By enabling this intensive agriculture, the chain pump directly supported the population booms that powered Chinese civilization for millennia. It was a machine built not for conquest, but for sustenance, a testament to how mechanical ingenuity, when applied to the fundamental challenge of survival, can reshape the destiny of a people. This relentless, rhythmic lifting of water represents one answer to a growing demand, but it also required constant human or animal effort. What if you could build a system that moved water with no moving parts at all, a structure that guided a river to purify itself? The chain pump was a machine that required constant effort, but in the heart of a lake-filled valley, another civilization engineered a system that worked almost by itself. The Aztecs did not just farm the land surrounding their capital of Tenochtitlan. They built entirely new land from the lake itself. These were the Chinampas, a network of floating gardens that formed one of the most productive agricultural systems in history. The name is poetic, but the reality was even more brilliant. They were not truly floating, but artificial islands constructed with meticulous layering. Workers would weave huge rectangular enclosures from reeds and drive sturdy wooden stakes into the shallow lakebed to mark the plot. They then piled layer upon layer of nutrient-rich mud scooped from the lake bottom, along with decaying vegetation, until the mound rose above the water's surface, creating a new, fertile plot of land. Each long, narrow chinampa was separated by a canal, And this is where the system's magic unfolded. The water in these surrounding channels did more than just separate one garden from the next. It constantly seeped into the porous soil of the Chinampa through capillary action, a natural process where water moves upward through tiny spaces in the earth. This provided a continuous, gentle irrigation to the crop's roots, eliminating the need for manual watering. The canals themselves were far more than water highways for canoes laden with produce. They were the engine of a self-cleaning ecosystem. The Aztecs cultivated aquatic plants like reeds and rushes along the edges. These plants acted as natural biofilters, their roots absorbing excess nutrients and filtering out impurities from the water, keeping it clean and clear. They even introduced fish into the canals. These fish served a dual purpose, providing a vital source of protein for the population and, crucially, consuming mosquito larvae and other pests, which controlled disease and maintained ecological balance. This created a perfect closed-loop cycle. The rich lake mud fertilized the crops fed the people, the waste from the people and decaying plant matter enriched the mud, and the fish and aquatic plants kept the water healthy. This bioengineered landscape was so efficient it could yield up to 7 harvests a year, feeding a city of hundreds of thousands without depleting the environment that sustained it. The Chinampas were not just farms, they were a living, breathing partnership with the water, a testament to a civilization that understood how to weave its survival directly into the fabric of the local ecosystem. This profound integration makes the brutal dismantling of such systems by foreign conquerors all the more tragic, a loss that forces us to ask what other sustainable wisdom has been erased from our collective memory. The rhythmic turning of the ox was the sound of a new era along the Nile. In ancient Nubia, the Shadoof's simple lever gave way to the mechanical hum of the Sakia, an animal-powered water wheel that transformed the economics of irrigation. This was not merely an improvement, it was a revolution in scale. The Sakia's design was elegantly complex. A single ox or donkey, walking a patient, endless circle, turned a horizontal gear. This gear engaged a vertical one which spun a large wheel outfitted with a chain of clay pots or wooden buckets. As the wheel rotated, each pot would dip into the river, fill, and then be carried to the top of its arc, where it would tip its contents into a waiting canal. This created a perpetual, flowing stream of water, a liquid conveyor belt that never rested. The force of animal muscle, multiplied through gears, could now lift water from significantly deeper sources than the Shadoof ever could, and it delivered a volume that was simply unattainable by human labor alone. The impact on the landscape was immediate and profound. Villages were no longer tethered to the river's very edge. With the Sakia's powerful, constant flow, canals could be extended further inland, opening up vast tracts of desert fringe for cultivation. This was the sound of a frontier expanding, the creak of wood and the splash of water allowing settlements and farms to push confidently into previously marginal lands. The Sakia directly enabled larger, more stable populations by guaranteeing food security far from the main channel. It marked a fundamental shift in the ancient world, the moment where the burden of survival began to transition from human shoulders to the steady, reliable strength of domesticated animals. This gear-driven workhorse became the engine for agricultural empires, proving that a simple mechanical advantage could literally reshape the boundaries of human habitation. A city's greatness could be measured not just by the water it brought in, but by the water it let flow out. In the bustling heart of ancient Rome and the intellectual centers of Greece, the grand bath complexes, the thermae, transformed the very concept of urban life. These were not simple bathing houses but monumental social engines, sprawling campuses of civilization under one roof. A citizen could spend an entire day moving through a sequence of rooms, from the sweaty heat of the caldarium to the warm embrace of the tepidarium, and finally the bracing chill of the frigidarium, all while conducting business in the libraries or exercising in the palestra. This grand social ritual, however, was built upon a hidden mountain of water. A single large complex like the Baths of Caracalla required a staggering volume, with aqueducts delivering thousands of gallons every hour to feed its myriad pools and fountains. This massive consumption created an equally massive problem: the constant production of wastewater. The solution was as grand as the baths themselves, a subterranean world of sewers. Rome's Cloaca Maxima began as an open drainage ditch but was later vaulted over, becoming a legendary sewer that channeled this endless flow of used water, along with other urban waste, directly into the Tiber River. This institutionalized cleanliness was a revolution in public health. By creating a culture where regular bathing was accessible to nearly every stratum of society, these cities actively fought the spread of disease and parasites that plagued less organized settlements. The bathhouse became a direct symbol of Roman order and sophistication, a tangible demonstration that a civilized life was a clean life. It forged a powerful link between the control of water and the perceived quality of existence, suggesting that true urban survival meant mastering the entire cycle of water, from its pristine arrival to its efficient expulsion. This vision of public health as a civic duty would, however, fade for centuries, leaving a void that would have devastating consequences for the crowded cities of the medieval world. The Roman bath celebrated water as a public luxury, but in the stark mountains of Oman, water was something far more precious, a shared inheritance measured not in gallons but in minutes. For over 2,000 years, the Aflaj system has channeled life through the desert, a network of subterranean tunnels that mirror the Persian Qanat in engineering, but diverge entirely in their soul. The true marvel of the Aflaj is not carved from stone, but woven into the fabric of society itself. Each falaj is governed by an intricate and unyielding legal code, a social contract that dictates exactly how its water is shared. The distribution is measured in precise units of time. A farmer might own the right to the full flow for 1 hour, a right passed down through generations, and as tangible a form of wealth as the land it irrigates. These water shares can even be bought and sold, creating an entire economy based on liquid time. To oversee this delicate balance, each community appoints a wakil, a trusted water master whose sole responsibility is to manage the clockwork rotation. Using a simple sundial or a carefully calibrated water clock, the wakil ensures that every plot of date palms, every field of alfalfa, receives its exact allotted share. No one takes more than their due, and no one receives less. This is not a system that relies on technology alone. It is a socio-hydraulic institution where the survival of the entire community depends on a universal agreement to be fair. The gentle, murmuring flow of water through the open channels at the village surface is the sound of that agreement in action, a constant reminder of a covenant made with the desert. It demonstrates with stunning clarity that the most resilient engineering is not the steel or concrete that guides the water, but the invisible architecture of trust and cooperation that guides the people who depend on it. This ancient model of communal governance, still functioning today, asks a piercingly modern question. In a world of increasing scarcity, will our own survival depend less on finding new water and more on remembering how to share it? Long before the Shadoof offered its mechanical advantage, the creak of wood on wood marked the rhythm of survival across Mesopotamia. This was the sound of the well sweep, a device of profound simplicity that brought water to the surface for the first farmers. Picture a long pole balanced like a seesaw on an upright post. A bucket dangled from the longer end, positioned directly over a well or riverbank. A farmer would simply pull down on the shorter end, dunking the bucket to fill it. Then the natural weight of the pole itself, acting as a counterbalance, would make lifting the full bucket a manageable task. It was not a powerful machine, but a clever application of basic physics, a lever in its most elemental form. This was the Shadoof's humble cousin, and its accessibility was its greatest strength. Built from little more than a single tree and some rope, any family, no matter how poor, could construct and maintain one. It required no special craftsmanship or rare materials. This simple device lowered the barrier to irrigation, allowing even the smallest plot of land to receive water drawn from a deeper source than a jar could reach. That rhythmic creak was the soundtrack to countless sunrises, the first mechanical answer to a problem as old as farming itself. The well sweep represents the genesis of our long struggle to overcome gravity, the initial, crucial step on a path that would later lead to geared water wheels and mighty aqueducts. It reminds us that the grandest solutions often begin not with complex plans, but with a single, clever idea balanced perfectly on a post. This legacy of liquid engineering speaks to a fundamental truth about our species. Our survival has never been a simple matter of finding water, but of learning how to think with it. These 24 systems reveal a pattern of human ingenuity that is both brilliant and deeply humbling. They show us that the greatest obstacle was never the desert or the flood itself, but the need to organize ourselves against it. The technical marvel of a Roman aqueduct was meaningless without the legions of surveyors and administrators who planned its path and maintained its flow. The hidden perfection of a Qanat would have collapsed without the shared knowledge of the Mukanis, passed from father to son, and the timeless harmony of the Amoni Aflaj is not preserved in its tunnels, but in the unwavering social contract that governs every drop. This was the real engineering, the architecture of human cooperation. With it, we built civilizations in the most impossible places, creating abundance from scarcity. But this power came with a profound responsibility, one that our ancestors sometimes failed to uphold. The salinized fields of Sumeria and the silent ruins at Marib stand as stark monuments to this truth. They teach us that a water system is not just a static tool, but a dynamic relationship with the environment, a balance that must be constantly maintained. The same creativity that could make a desert bloom could also, through a failure of foresight, sow the seeds of its own destruction. Our modern world, with its sprawling megacities and vast agricultural demands, is the inheritor of this ancient struggle. We face the same essential challenges, just on a planetary scale. The question these old blueprints leave us with is not whether we can build bigger, but whether we have learned the deeper lesson they offer. Can we combine our formidable technical power with the wisdom to share, to sustain, and to listen to the water's own language before it is too late? From the hidden labyrinths of the Qanat to the soaring arches of the Roman aqueduct, these 24 ingenious water systems reveal a profound truth. Civilization is, at its core, a story written in water. Our ancestors' brilliance in capturing, channeling, and conserving this vital element allowed them to do far more than just survive. It enabled them to thrive, to build empires, and to create cultures whose echoes we still hear in our world today. This legacy is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a direct challenge to us in the modern era as we confront our own escalating water crises. Their successes and their failures speak to us across the centuries. The silent, salted fields of Sumeria warn us of unintended consequences. The still functioning tanks of Sri Lanka show us the power of sustainable design. The communal laws of the Ammonia Flag remind us that fairness is the ultimate infrastructure. This journey through liquid history should inspire us to see the world's water with new eyes. To look at a tap and appreciate the vast hidden systems that bring it to life. To understand that every drop is part of a continuous ancient struggle and triumph. Our role now is to preserve this legacy, to learn from both the wisdom and the warnings etched in stone and earth. We must ask ourselves if we are building systems for the next 1,000 years or merely for the next decade. If these ancient solutions resonated with you, share your own thoughts in the comments below. Let us know which system you found most inspiring and subscribe for more deep dives into the enduring mysteries of our past.